This could very well be the first nationwide protest organized by Chinese millennials in a distinctly millennial fashion. So in China, thousands of homebuyers have sent letters to the banks telling them that they are going to stop making mortgage payments because they simply have no idea when they're going to move into the homes that they already paid for. That's because a vast amount of Chinese developers have run into financial trouble, so they're slowing down construction and sometimes halting it completely. When my colleagues and I went around the Chinese social media talking to home buyers, we quickly realized that they're almost always Chinese millennials. This one makes sense because millennials are in the right age group to be buying homes. Chinese millennials are often called the luckiest generation in China because they grew up over 30, 40 years of uninterrupted economic growth, so they've had it relatively easy. As far as I could recall, this is really the first major debacle these Chinese millennials have faced. And they've quickly come together, organized themselves, wrote these letters in groups and sent them over to banks. And in a uniquely millennial fashion, they also made short videos posted on Douyin and Xiaohongshu as a form of protest. So this is very likely the first protest organized by Chinese millennials in a distinctly millennial fashion. Yeah, strange, isn't it? But apparently that's just how it's worked in China. The pre-sale system allows property developers to sell homes that they haven't even built. And once sold, the banks will send the mortgage money to the developers. And of course, then the banks would want to be paid by the consumers right away. In the past, that would usually happen a year and a half before the actual delivery of the apartments. But since 2020, the Chinese government decided to clamp down on rapid rising property prices. And to do that, they decided that developers couldn't borrow so much money anymore. At the same time, because of COVID, people couldn't go out and buy homes, so that cuts off another source of financing to the developers. They've had to slow down construction on the homes that they already sold to other people, and sometimes halting construction completely. The wait becomes 2 years, 3 years, and sometimes indefinitely if construction is halted altogether. To be honest, no one really knows. Because China still has a strict zero-COVID policy, it's impossible to do on-the-ground research. It's also a moving target because more and more developers are running into so-called financial distress. But there are some estimates that say the affected population is about 7.5 million people. Now, 7.5 million for a country of 1.4 billion people really isn't a lot. That's why majority of the financial analysis are saying, it's no big deal. But at the same time, 7.5 million people, that's all the people a city like Hong Kong has, and it's bigger than the population of Singapore. So it is a lot of human sufferings to be shrugging off. This is especially acute in China, perhaps because people attach so much emotional weight to the physical home. It's not just a roof over their head. To a lot of people, it is part and parcel of what makes a family. A lot of Chinese parents wouldn't let their daughters marry men without a home. That's the so-called mother-in-law economy. In good times, it gave young men a lot of stress. In bad times like now, it sometimes leads to outright human tragedy. Now, one of our profiles is a man in his mid-30s and living in the central province of Hunan. And he really bought this apartment to settle down and start a family. And to be honest, he was doing quite well. He had a girlfriend who was pregnant. They were planning on their wedding when construction was halted. As a result, the girl's parents changed their mind and forced the girl to have an abortion and leave him. Now the man has no wife, no child, no home, but a mortgage that will follow him for the next 20 years. And it's unclear when his woes are going to end, because despite repeated pledges by the Chinese government that it'll prioritize the completion of homes, it still hasn't said who is going to foot the bill. Without any clarity on who's going to write the check for the bailout, lots of people are going to get stuck in this uncertainty for a very long time. You should absolutely care, because China is the second largest economy in the world, and real estate has been its biggest economic sector. Home building and its related industries have accounted for up to 30% of the Chinese economy. So if it's going to collapse, that will be a fresh catastrophe for the world. But even if it doesn't, some economists expect the sector to be 20-30% smaller than it was, simply because of Chinese demographic changes. There are not as many new people and children in China than there was in the past, so not such a big need for new homes anymore. And the adjustment, its effects will be felt all around the world. China will not need so much iron and steel going into construction, and it will not need so much timber to make furniture. That means industries and countries as far as Brazil, Australia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand will feel the impact. At the same time, the Chinese government might have been a little too successful at clamping down on rising home prices, so much so that home prices are dropping in most parts of the country. That means that the Chinese middle class who own 1, 2, or multiple homes will suddenly feel a lot less rich and a lot more reluctant to travel abroad, buy luxury cars, handbags, watches, or even make fewer trips to the casino. That will affect countries such as France, Germany, Italy, even Singapore. So this is something that really has the potential to remake the global economy. That's why you should absolutely watch this episode of Insight, in which we talk to Chinese home buyers, real estate agents, suppliers to developers who got rich on a property boom, but now are at the risk of losing it all.